Hello all. The session is about the hypersensitivity or allergy. And we are all aware of the factor that our body have a very good immune system to work against foreign antigens, the foreign substance which happen to come in contact with the body surface. And the abnormal function. So normally a body has the capability to defend or defense against the foreign substance which happen to come in contact with our body, and that is known as immune response, that is known as immunity. And if the body fails to react, or if the body resists to react to this foreign material which are harmful to our body, that result in immune disorders. And there are certain substances. In this picture you can see there are many substances which are present in nature itself which cause allergy. Like for some of us, when you come in contact with the hay, you will get some itching, or you will feel some asthmatic symptoms. And if you come in contact with the flower of the acacia plant, or if you come in contact with dust, there are certain substances which elicit some uh, a wide changes in your body, like itching, or there may be inflammation of different body parts, there may be vomiting, there may be you may have fever. There are many symptoms which result as a result of the exposure of our body to certain foreign substances, and those and that reactions which we call together those responses as allergy. And so allergy is a term that is used. This overall response of our body is called, or overactivity of this immune system to the antigens is called allergy or hypersensitivity. So the overactivity of the immune system to antigens is called hypersensitivity or allergy. And in this example, in this picture, you can see some of the examples of allergy, and the substance which cause allergy is called allergens. So allergens are those substances that cause allergic reactions, and allergy is the overactivity of the immune system. Not the normal one, overactivity of the immune system is called hypersensitivity or allergy. And the common allergens are dust, hay, flower of the pollen grains of acacia, then some food. Each people have different allergies. Some may be allergic to the shellfishes, some may be allergic to prawns, some may be allergic to nuts, some may be allergic to bread, some may be allergic to corn, like that. So many allergens are there. So any substance which elicit allergic reaction are called allergens. Example, dust, shellfish, nuts, etc. Anything. Because the allergy response vary from individual to individual. It is very specific. So, and this foreign substance we can call as an antigen, or the allergen can be considered as an antigen. So hypersensitivity reactions or the allergic reactions are actually antigen specific, and they occur after the immune system have already responded to the antigen. So first thing what happens is that the body will have come in contact with the antigen, and the body will react to it, and then after some time only our body will react in a wide manner, and that causes many problems. Because if you're having an inflammation, and that is one of the common responses, you will get some itching or inflammation, and if you're having inflammation on the outside or in your outside the body, you have the same response in all the internal organs also. That is very dangerous. So let's see the hypersensitivity reactions. The hypersensitivity reactions are actually they are undesirable. We can't predict what will happen. So it is excessive, it is undesirable, and it causes damaging, discomfort producing, and sometimes fatal too. So allergic reactions are very, very dangerous, that sometimes it may be fatal reaction, and because of the overactivity of the immune system. And so it requires a pre-sensitized immune state of the host. The the responses are actually the part. So the allergic response are actually the part of immune system itself. Our body will respond to a antigen, but if it is overreactive, allergy means overreactivity of the immune system. So that is dangerous. So after the initial sensitization, the responses may occur daily when the immune cells come in contact with the same antigen. So every time the person will get exposed to a dust or a hay, he will be allergic. And based on the types of cells involved or based on the reactions involved with the antigen, the hypersensitivity is broadly classified into 4 types: type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. And this hypersensitivity reactions or allergic reaction will result in the or produce tissue injury. It causes tissue injury in this organisms. Let's see one by one. So based on the cells which are involved, it is divided into different types. First is type 1 hypersensitivity. Type 1 hypersensitivity is called immediate. It is called immediate hypersensitivity because it is mediated by IgE. And you all will be aware of the different types of antibodies present in our body. There are 5 antibodies, that is G, A, M, D and E are the 5 antibodies which is present in our body. So in type 1 hypersensitivity, the antibody, the type 1, 2 and 3, type 1, 2 and 3 hypersensitivity are antibody mediated. I said there are 4 types: type 1 hypersensitivity, type 2 hypersensitivity, type 3 and type 4. 1, 2 and 3 are antibody mediated and 4 is actually a cell mediated hypersensitivity. So type 1 is called immediate hypersensitivity and it is mediated by the IgE antibodies. And these IgE antibodies which are produced by the plasma, and these IgE antibodies bind to the receptors on the mast cells or the blood basophils. They bind onto the mast cells, the receptors on the mast cells. Then the antigens that stimulate are called allergens, and the common examples are which in which the type 1 hypersensitivity is involved are the house dust. That is dust, of course, chalk dust or the dust and house, when you dust your house or the old books and all, that is causing allergy to some people. House dust, pollens, cosmetics, powder or etc. Some insects or even insect bite. For some people the insect bite will be very, very allergic. For example, if a mosquito bite a person, for one person that will be a small itching will be there for some time and after that will be normal. But for some people it will be dangerous or that result in inflammation, etc. So exposure to this antigens are dust, pollens or any insect bite, etc. So this exposure can be by ingestion, if you inhale it, or if you eat it, or if you get through injection or through direct contact. And the type 1 hypersensitivity reactions is actually systemic. That means the type 1 hypersensitivity reactions are systemic. Systemic means it is associated with some specific target tissue or organ. That's why it's called systemic. Type 1 hypersensitivity reactions is systemic. Example, systemic anaphylaxis or a particular organ, or it is localized to a specific target tissue. For example, inflammation of liver or inflammation of kidney, like that. Also, example, allergic rhinitis or asthma. You will have a watery nose or you will have asthma. That means the respiratory system is affected when you are exposed to these antigens. So that's all about the type 1 so type 1 or hypersensitivity, and the mediators or these allergens will result in the response like smooth muscle contraction and vasodilation. So type 1 means immediate hypersensitive. That means when you come in contact with the allergen, a response or a overreaction of the immune response takes place. That's why it's called immediate hypersensitivity. Type 1 hypersensitivity is the one which is we commonly called allergy. It is mediated by IgE antibodies. Then the antigens are dust, pollens, cosmetics, etc. And the body may inhale, the person may inhale it or ingest it. And it is very specific to particular systems. And in this, the examples dust and also it is, which I have mentioned, it will be associated with the respiratory system or any specific system. Now, next is type 2 hypersensitivity. Type 2 hypersensitivity is also involved by a antibody itself, and it is cytotoxic. The antibodies involved are IgG or IgM. That is the difference. Type 2 hypersensitivity, the antibodies involved are IgM and IgG. Then this IgM and IgG immunoglobulin will react with the cell surface antigens and activate the complement system. You might have learned about the complement systems and produce direct damage of the cell surface. This is cell surface. So type 2 is called cytotoxic hypersensitivity. The IgM or IgG antibody will come in contact with the antigenic determinants on the cell surface, and it render or help the cell surface to become opsonized by the antibody. And this opsonized antibody is actually phagocytosed by the macrophages. And the antibody facilitates the association between the phagocytic cells and the antigen bearing cell. And the best example of this type 2 hypersensitivity is involved in during blood transfusion. Blood transfusion or transfusion reactions and hemolytic disease of the newborn babies are examples of type 2 hypersensitivity. So that's all about type 2 hypersensitivity. Type 2 hypersensitivity is called cytotoxic, and the antibodies involved are G and M. And G and M will come in contact with the antigenic determinants on the cell surface of the antigen, and it will become opsonized by the antibody, and this opsonized antibodies are actually phagocytosed by the macrophages. Example, this happens during the blood transfusion and the hemolytic disease of the newborn babies. Next is type 3 hypersensitivity. Type 3 hypersensitivity is called immune complex mediated because not many cells are involved. Irrespective of type 1 and type 2, in type 3 more cells are involved, or a complex, a group of cells are involved. So it is called immune complex mediated. It's called immune complex mediated hypersensitivity. And this type 3, that's why it's called immune complex hypersensitivity. And the reaction or response will take, you will get a response after some time. It may take 3 to 12 hours, or even it may after 15 hours only you will get a visible response. A visible response can be seen only after the exposure of the antigen after 15 hours. And the reaction may be general, that is serum sickness, or it may involve the individual organs including other organs. That is the peculiarity of type 3. It means this is not systemic. I have told type 1 was systemic. That means it was target specific. But type 3, it's not specific. more than one organ will be affected or more than one organ will be involved in this hypersensitivity or allergic reactions. And the antigen causing immune complex mediate injuries are the exogenous. If the antigens can be exogenous either from outside or from inside, that is type 3. Then the type 3 hypersensitivity, what happens is the antigen combines with the antibody. The antigen combined with the antibody and within the circulation or through the blood circulation, it will flow as an immune complex system. That is, the antigen will bind to the antibody and they will flow through the circulatory system, or the immune complexes are formed every time, each and every time the allergen or this antigen come in contact with the antibody. They form an antigen antibody complex and they flow through the circulatory system, and these immune complexes will be deposited. That is the that is the difference between type 1 and type 2. I told the antigen binds with the antibody, and this complex or this immune complex will be deposited where they are deposited on the some tissues and organs. May not be on one organ. These complex antigen antibody complex will be deposited on organs in the internal organs. And this actually the term this immune complex disease refers to a group of disease whose pathogenesis involves the tissue damage. So as a result of this deposition of the complex on the target organs, it will result in the tissue injury. So when this antigen antibody complex is formed, they will be deposited on the organs, and after that what happens, a complement system will be activated. That means a cascade of reactions or a cascade of changes in the immune response will take place. And as a result, the polymorphonuclear cells, the PMN cells or the polymorphonuclear cells are attracted to this site, and this result in the inflammation and tissue injury of that specific cells. So when the body is exposed to excessive amount of the same antigen, if the body is exposed to the same antigen but in large amount, what will happen is that this repeated contact will result in the tissue damage or tissue injury extensively. And this complex, the antigen antibody complex, form insoluble complex. That is why it is persisting in the body itself. They form as an insoluble complexes and they will damage the cell. The antigen antibody complex form. Second step is what is deposited on the target cell. What is the peculiarity of this complex? It is insoluble, so it will be persisting on the surface of the target cell. And because it is persisting for a longer time, that will result in the tissue injury. And that result in the typical inflammation. The typical symptoms include skin rashes. You will get some rashes on your skin, arthritic symptoms, and glomerulonephritis. There are many symptoms associated with this. So serum sickness and arrest reactions are the two type 3 mediated immune response complex. The mechanism of type 3, I said antigen antibody complex is formed. Then phagocytes remove most of the cells. Our body have not many phagocytes or the macrophages which have the capability to eat or destroy this antigen antibody complex. That is a normal function which is happening. Any antigen happens to enter into your body, it will form an antigen antibody complex, and this complex will be digested by the phagocytes or the macrophages. That is a normal procedure. And some antigen antibody complex will escape from this phagocytes, and those complexes which are escaped from the phagocytes will lodge or will accumulate in the walls of the blood vessels, and they form this. They result in the formation of the continuous activation of complement reaction. That is what? Inactive, if an inactive complement or an insoluble complement is formed, not many neutrophils will be attracted to that region and inflammatory chemicals such as histamine will be released at this site. And this result in the vascular damage of the blood cells or the blood capillaries, and the neutrophil inflammatory chemicals damage the blood vessel. The wall of the blood vessel will be damaged as a result of this continuous activation of neutrophils. And that is all about the type 3 hypersensitivity. So type 3 hypersensitivity is called immune complex disease because a lot many, it is not specific or it is not targeted at a specific tissue. Lot many cells are involved in this response. Antigen antibody. First step is antigen antibody complex will be formed. Second is phagocytosis will happen, but few antigen antibody complex which are insoluble will escape from this phagocytosis and they will get deposited on the surface of the organs or tissues. And this complex will result in the continuous activation of complement reactions of the immune response, and that will result in the tissue injury. That means, and when this complement is formed, neutrophils will be attracted to that specific region and inflammatory chemicals will be released. As a result, you may feel like rashes on the skin and edema or mild swelling or redness will happen. Now, next or the last one is the type 4 hypersensitivity. Type 4 hypersensitivity is the only type which is cell mediated, or type 4 hypersensitivity results from the extensive interaction between the antigen and a normal cell mediated immune response system. You might have learned in immunity that is there are two types of cell mediated response. So the type 4 is called delayed or cell mediated hypersensitivity, and in this is a function of T lymphocytes are involved and not antibody. So cell mediated is comparatively slow when in response with this antibodies. So the cells which are involved are the T lymphocytes, not antibody, and the response or you will get a observable response or only after 1 day, 2 days or 3 days. The response is very slow. That is the peculiarity of type 3. Type 1 was very fast, type 2 was fast, type 3 it may take 15 hours, but type 4 is delayed for almost 2 to 3 days or 1, 2 or 3 or 4 days, that depends on the individual. So type 4 is delayed hypersensitivity or cell mediated hypersensitivity. No antibody is involved. Then it is also called delayed hypersensitivity because the symptoms will be manifested only after a few days. And the mechanism of damage is actually delayed by delayed hypersensitivity is because of the activation of T lymphocytes and monocytes or macrophages. The T cells will recognize the antigen together with the MHC class II molecules, major histocompatibility complex cells, that you have learned in the introductory part. So the T cells or the T lymphocytes recognize the antigen together with MHC class II and are activated, and the activated T cells proliferate and release lymphokines. The cytotoxic T cells cause direct damage, and the helper T cells secrete cytokines, which in turn activate the cytotoxic T cells and will direct the activated monocytes and macrophages, and they cause the bulk of the damage. And this immune response does not eliminate, and this peculiarity is that this immune response or type 4 hypersensitivity will not eliminate the offending antigen. The antigen evokes a chronic cell-mediated hypersensitivity. The antigen will not be removed from the body as a result of the cell-mediated immune response, and the antigen will evoke a cell-mediated hypersensitivity. And the examples or some of the microbial agents like Mycobacterium tuberculosis, viruses, fungi, parasites, etc. are result in this type 4 or cell-mediated hypersensitivity. So this is a session about the different types of hypersensitivity. We learned what hypersensitivity is or allergy is: the overactivity of immune response. Substance which cause allergy are called allergens. Example: pollen, dust, insects, etc. And the allergic reactions is of 4 types: type 1, 2, type 3 and type 4. Type 1, type 2 and type 3 are antibody mediated, and type 4 is cell mediated. Type 1 is mediated by IgE, type 2 is mediated by IgM and IgG, and type 3 is a complex cells are involved. Then type 4 is cell mediated or T cell mediated immune response, and it is very slow. The manifestation of the symptoms will be happening only after few days. So with this I conclude today's class session, and thank you.